now he's going to take up God's people, but he begins with Judah, and the first is against the southern kingdom, and he came from down there. And verse 4, I'm reading now, "Thus saith the Lord, for 3 transgressions of Judah, and for 4 I will turn away its punishment." Now, in other words, again, God could enumerate many for which they were guilty, but here is the chief one. "Because they have despised the law of the Lord, and have not kept his commandments, and their lies caused them to err, after which their fathers have walked." Now, he says, "But I will send a fire upon Judah, and it shall devour the palaces of Jerusalem." Now, this is saying in a very brief way what Isaiah and Jeremiah and Ezekiel took quite a few pages to say. That is, that God would judge the southern kingdom of Judah that went into Babylonian captivity, that he would judge it for what? They did not keep the commandments of God. They despised God's law. Now, Judah had the law of God and despised it. Temple was down in Jerusalem, and God now judges them according to the law. Have you noticed that God never judged any of these other nations on that basis whatsoever? That he judged them for certain specific sins they committed, sins that are common to mankind today that is in sin, but the other nations did not have God's law, and therefore they were not judged according to God's law. And he says here, "I will send a fire upon Judah, and it'll devour the palaces of Jerusalem." Now, you will find that again and again he mentions, as the other prophets do, the fact that there is to be a judgment by fire. And you'll find that running actually not only through this prophecy, but you find it running through the other prophets. And when Nebuchadnezzar came, he burned Jerusalem to the ground. Absolutely burned it. Nothing left but the stones that were there. And, of course, there were plenty of stones in that particular place. Now, that is something that he's delivering now. That is, Amos is delivering up in Bethel, and he's speaking in the king's chapel. Now, I think that probably every time he got up to speak, he'd take up one of these nations, and he would pronounce God's judgment upon it, but he gets now to Judah, and that's getting pretty close to home. Maybe a few squirmed in their pew when he mentioned Judah, but after all, the 10 northern tribes and the 2 southern tribes were at war a great deal of the time. There were several times when they made alliances, but they only made them because of fear and of necessity to stand against a common enemy. But most of the time, why, they were enemies. And therefore, when Amos gave his message of judgment against the southern kingdom, everyone was present and amened him for that, because they were in agreement that God should judge Jerusalem and Judah. But now the northern kingdom, what about the northern kingdom?